I think what everyone needs to know that there are two types of drugs. There are legal and illegal drugs. I think very often when we hear about drugs, we think of the illegal drugs only. Marijuana, LSD, cocaine. But there's a whole other set of drugs, pharmaceutical products, that are also part of this drugs in society. Most Americans pop a pill. So we need to know, students need to know about both the legal drugs and the illegal drugs. So we talk about their uses, what they do to your body, what they do to your brain, the disadvantages, what you can do to avoid them, and things like that. That's the whole premise of the class. I think students are at the age and the stage in their lives where they're young, some of them are very young, some of them are, a little older, and they live in New York City, so they're exposed, number one, to a lot of illegal drugs. I mean, in New York City, most people know that, marijuana, cocaine, LSD, students know of somebody who's taken them, how to get them, or some of them may have used drugs themselves. I have in some of my classes ex-drug users, so who know about illegal drugs. So for them, it's a way to sort of step away and learn the theory about what's going on in the streets. What do these drugs do to you? What you think they might do. Some kids say, I take marijuana to do well in school. Well, they think that's what happens, but in many cases, they lose brain cells eventually. So for them to know these types of things are good for them, number one. And number two, about the legal drugs. Students have a lot of stress in their lives. They're studying, they're working, they have families. Sometimes depression may be a concern. So they need to know about depression drugs or bipolar drugs, where somebody's depressed one day and active the next day. These are very common diseases that they need to know about, that they may be on some medications, their friends might be on medication, their parents might be on medication. So it's good for them to have a grasp of what these things can do and what they cannot do, the limitations as well. The consequences of taking drugs are very, very crucial. Most kids don't know that when they drink alcohol, or when they smoke cigarettes, or when they take marijuana, they're destroying their brain cells. They feel the initial buzz, that they feel good, they're having a good time. They crack jokes, they're the life of the party, but they don't know at the same time, while they're doing that, they're losing brain cells, the brain is getting smaller, their critical thinking is being reduced. So those types of things, those consequences are not readily apparent to them on a Saturday night. So when they come to class on Monday morning, we talk about those consequences. The number one cause of accidents on the road is alcohol. So it is a major drug that causes major problem. The number one preventable cause of death is tobacco. So if you don't drink alcohol, you're safe from accidents on the road. If you don't smoke tobacco, you prevent many deaths. So both alcohol and tobacco and caffeine are all drugs that we use on a regular basis. Well, not a regular basis, a lot. And those have major consequences as well. I think the information's out there, but I think the problem is there's information and there's knowledge. We have the information, but it hasn't translated into knowledge and making correct decisions. So we know of these things, we hear about them, but we don't think, or we don't apply it to our lives on a regular basis. What we need to do a better job of is not just giving information, but make sure there's some behavior changes. Make sure people realize the consequences of taking these drugs and therefore make changes. I think that's the key, because most kids know that if you drink and drive, it's dangerous. But how do we make sure it resonates with them and they make it part of their decision making? What we try to do in this class. The use of caffeine is it's part of our society. We drink coffee when we talk with friends. When you wake up in the morning, almost everybody drinks coffee. A lot of people drink coffee. So the use of caffeine and its impact on our health is becoming much more important. Caffeine is a stimulant. It could make your heart race a little faster, make your blood vessels a little irritated. So what that means is it could affect your blood pressure, your heart disease, and those kinds of cardiovascular health problems. So why it's so important is some of the side effects of caffeine, and like you just said, your doctors are beginning to ask about this a little bit more, because it's more of the negative effects of caffeine. They stimulate you, they make your heart race faster, which could lead to high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So it's becoming more of a public health problem. As we mentioned, A lot of people, just to get through the day, they drink the Red Bull. Or they go to parties, drink the Red Bull, and then add, caffeine and alcohol. What usually happens is that alcohol and Red Bull. Alcohol is a drug. Red Bull has caffeine, and then you add tobacco. With these three drugs in your system, you're creating havoc, dangerous situations in your system. So much so that some of the consequences of combining these three drugs are much more dangerous than if they were taken individually. And some of those consequences range from getting to a blackout where you don't know what happened the last 5 minutes, or you can't remember what happened yesterday. People might go into a coma. Those types of really dangerous situations when you add these three drugs together. And we do address that in class as well. The best argument for moderation works with alcohol, because there's a belief that if you have a glass of wine a day, it can help your cardiovascular health. 2 beers for a male and 1 for a female is moderation, not too much, could do some benefits. There are some studies that do say that if you drink in moderation, you do get some benefits. So in terms of drugs and benefits, the best argument you can make is with alcohol. A little bit of wine with your meals seems to give some protective benefits based on some studies. A little alcohol every once in a while, 2 drinks for a male, 1 for a female, seems to help in certain areas. We don't know, it's not conclusive yet, but there are some studies that do suggest that there are some benefits from moderate alcohol use.